Hello, 21 Accents family, and welcome to another Coaches Roundtable.
Vocal fry and how when you speak with vocal fry, it comes with judgment. Like it is received with judgment from other people.
Age does play a big factor in where is our pitch. And as we grow and evolve and mature, we are allowed to change that pitch.
Anybody been told you're too much, too loud, too everything? Yeah, okay, let's hear about that. So excited and honestly a little nervous to be talking about this very powerful and important and complicated topic of women's voices and accents. And our intention here is to speak from the heart, from our own truth that we've experienced, from if we have loved ones who've shared experience and we feel called to share that, we may. And I'd like to acknowledge that we are all cisgendered women who are heterosexual. So there's so much more intersectionality to this topic for non-binary people, for people with different abilities. There's just so many factors here, and we can't talk about it all. But we're going to start the conversation because it's an important conversation, and because our voices are technically invisible. It's something that gets normalized a lot. Oh, I think Gracia might have popped off for a moment. She'll pop back in. We've got a little technical thing. Here she is. So here we go. We'd love to hear your experiences as well. Please feel free to share in the chat so that more people can learn and heal and grow together. So thank you. Yay, perfect timing. Gracia's back. That starts off with a win. Yeah. So would anyone like to start off? We're some of the topics that we talked about a little bit are pitch, uptick, fry, different accents, different ethnicities. So as that applies to each of us. Feels called to share. Yeah, Gracia.
One of the things that we did not put on that list was age.
Oh,
and that is a huge factor in how women, and for our group, I missed the introduction, but for cisgendered women, when we think of our age and how we should communicate or how we do communicate authentically, age does play a big factor in where is our pitch. And as we as we grow and evolve and mature, we are allowed to change that pitch for whatever reason. And I love playing with demographics because there's a time and a place when a woman will have a different pitch than maybe the rest of her peers. And when you look at all of the different demographics, because of her own personality, or not just demographics, when you look at who she is at her core, then those little pieces can make up why this woman, this girl, might have this very specific voice. For example, if a a woman my age has a much higher pitch, and maybe it could be natural, that's just her natural voice, but it could also be maybe her personality. Maybe she's just a little, just a very bubbly personality, very, and her job allows for this, and maybe she teaches children, and you can add so many different factors to the voice when her peers, other educators, other people of, it within that same group might have a different voice, a different tone, a different pitch. But when you take out those specific little factors and you can see, oh, that makes sense. That makes sense why she would have this voice that fits, or that voice doesn't quite fit, and why. And there are times when when our voices don't fit, and it can be off-putting. It can be distracting. It can be like, that's, I was not expecting that voice with that face and that body and that personality. And there are varying reasons why, but it could be our own biases that you're expecting to speak with someone who is this, and this, and then they speak and, oh, wasn't expecting that. It could be a pleasant surprise. It could be, I I don't know how to respond to that. I don't know. And again, for varying reasons. But I'm getting off topic. But yeah, just demographics with age is interesting when it comes to how women articulate, how we communicate, how we project our voices.
Yeah. So let's get into some examples about that. So I loved how you talked about the difference between what people are expecting and what happens when they don't get what they're expecting.
Mm-hmm.
Or when they don't get what is expected of you in all of your intersectionality.
Yes.
Anyone want to share personal experiences and what you've maybe done, if anything, to protect yourself from that, or to head that off, or to, change because you know it's coming?
Well, I just in my experience, having worked in corporate world for many years, and I've mentioned this in our various meetings, that being told you're so well spoken for a Black woman, ugh, it's nails on a chalkboard, because someone else has an expectation of what my voice should be that has absolutely nothing to do with me. So when I speak, when I communicate, they are expecting something different than what I present. And their response, and this is a whole other conversation, of course, but their response is to say something very off-putting, very racist, very negative, very, and in the very beginning, because I did not know how to respond to that, I just, oh, thank you, until I realized that, because I didn't know. I thought that was a compliment. I thought it was like, oh, well, thank you. I am well spoken. I grew up this way. And yeah, I you noticed. Okay, good. I am. But why am I well spoken for? I'm well spoken for a, no. I am just well spoken.
Yeah.
Fact.
Yeah.
I'm not representing. I am. Isa. Oh, did you freeze?
Um, um, because my mom, she is in the business world, and she 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 has an accent, right? And so it kind of feels to her like she needs to get rid of that accent so that people can take her seriously as a woman, because it's not what people are expecting. She opens her mouth to talk, and people immediately get like, "Oh, wait." And she feels like it brings down the the amount of respect or the amount of trust that people can put in her, because she might not, oh, since you have an accent and we can tell that you are Mexican, then you probably don't have the level of education that we are looking for. And it's something that I've heard from a lot of my clients as well. But yeah, that was like a quick example that I just wanted to add to what you were saying. That's kind of
Yeah.
the opposite thing. People being surprised because you're well spoken, and then people being surprised because you're not, because you have an accent. And her English is perfect, just accented.
Mm-hmm. And it's her second language. How many of the people there even speak two languages that well, right? You cut out a little bit. It came in at when you were talking about your mom. I just wanted to make sure we didn't miss anything else did you also want to share anything about personal experience with this or later? I just wanted to make sure we didn't miss something.
Sorry, I just wanted to give the example of my mom.
Yeah.
Thought that it was such a clear contrast um, to what Gracia was saying.
Yeah. Yeah. And those experiences I don't have as the privilege of being a white person. Privilege is such a yucky word, but because it shouldn't be a privilege. I don't experience that racism in this country. I don't experience that racism as a white person. What I've dealt with, which is a no level, what you're dealing with, is I've definitely controlled my pitch. You know, we talked about that. I've made sure that my voice is as resonant and clear and articulate, but not too articulate as possible, because I definitely notice a difference as a woman. And particularly when I first moved to LA 10 years ago, being in most of the meetings, I was the only woman. And so it was assumed I was the secretary, even when I was the co-producer. So, you know, you hear a lot of stuff about don't be shrill, don't be nasal. People come in with this fear of being nasal, which is so interesting because there are many accents that have a nasal quality that don't, you know, English accents largely have a nasal quality and are not actually much more nasal and are not sort of derided for being nasal. But there are certain ways that I have been very particular. You know, I grew up in Washington State, but I had friends who had more, you know, lived more in their nose or had more of a sibilant S or more of an uptick or different things. And I was very intentionally, okay, better not be that, because they're discounted as stupid or as incapable or as just not an authority on their topic of expertise, because it's further away from that, you know, that normalized masculine way. And I want to say our intention here, we're not here to blame all the men or vilify anybody. We're not here to point blame. We're just here to unpack what has been and what is, so that we can look at it and choose differently for each other, for ourselves. And if there are, you know, cisgendered men here, hetero men here, bless you. Let's learn together. You know, we're not here to blame anybody. Let's just learn some of the ways that we might be judging people, so that we can say, hey, that's not this person. Let me be with this person here, and not get caught up in how it's coming out.
Yes.
Yeah. What else?
I think with pitch, that's something that I've experienced a lot, especially being in my early 20s. I have to be very mindful, and it's not something I have to do, but something I feel I get judged for if I get too excited and my pitch goes up, or if I am adding too many likes in the conversation, then the value of what I'm saying gets completely taken away. Or, you know, if I am, I don't know, like if I'm speaking too fast, if I, you know, like if my voice isn't calm and, you know, just low, and I'm taking my time and I'm not stumbling over my words, which I tend to do because English is my second language. And so then I feel like the value of what I have to say gets taken away. And it's very interesting because I don't have the experience of, oh, I think Gracia needs another minute. But when I was growing up, people always would tell me that my voice was very raspy and very low for a little girl. And that gave me a sense of like, oh, thank you. And then as I grew up, it just became normal. I just have a normal voice now. And especially right now, I can feel it being lower than what it usually is in conversation. Um, but if I like now, I kind of feel like I'm younger. Like I'm used to sounding older than what I actually am. And now I kind of not, it's not something that I hate about myself, but it is something that makes a difference in the way people treat you and the way people react to your voice when you just sound like the age that you have or a little younger, or if you're giggling too much and then your pitch goes up. So it's been kind of hard handling that, like not having the privilege of a lower register. Yeah, that's it.
Oh, that's fascinating. I never thought, I like the way you said that, having the privilege of a lower register. I've always had access to that. And as I've gotten older, I have just settled into a lower register and I like it. But there's also a sense of authority with that. And when I started, I've been in office administration for years. I was the secretary, but then as I grew in my career and had more authority, and I wasn't just the secretary, I was managing everything, then I had to have more authority. Then once I started teaching and I was the authority on the topic in the, not just in the country, but, when I was living abroad, I had to project my voice and I had to sound like I knew what I was talking about. But what just popped in my head was back when I was studying languages and back in the day when all you had was books and tapes and you didn't have access to the internet, and we could just go to the bookstore and just grab a couple things. I remember studying Japanese and having the hardest time getting a handle on saying the words because I couldn't find the register. Because when you back then, I'm sure it's changed now, or just different maybe, but back then you had the voices were very, very high. Ohayo gozaimasu. Everything was very, very high up. And so as I'm practicing, I would move everything up there, but it never felt natural, never felt authentic. And I had to learn to bring it down to my register where it felt natural. And then, like, oh, okay, now I can start here. I can own that. I don't have to introduce myself way up here and feel like I'm playing a character. I'm just trying to make friends. I'm just trying to say hi. But it felt very inauthentic. And so to even train myself to bring that back down and introduce myself, say hi, ohayo gozaimasu. I didn't need to I could feel that. I could own that. I could claim that sound, that voice without it feeling like I'm putting on someone else's voice and that is not me. And am I insulting an entire culture by trying to put on this voice? I am so sorry. That's not my voice. That's not me at all. But to bring it back to women and our voices, I don't have to put on that voice to sound like a woman. I can still claim my voice as myself and change and bring it wherever I am, wherever I settle. I get to claim that and bring that along for the ride. And wherever I evolve and grow, I get to bring all of those other accents and languages that I like to play with, that I like to learn. I get to bring them along at the same level where I am, not having to sound like someone else. And I think that's one thing that so many women specifically struggle with is how do I sound like myself and not like I'm playing and pretending to be someone that I'm not. I'm not. I am not a Japanese woman. I should not try to sound like a Japanese woman. I should sound like myself speaking Japanese.
Such a complicated point because culturally, people's voices sit in different places, especially women's. It's totally normal for Japanese women on that to have a different resonance pattern than we have. It's normal. So coming into this country then, when tones are perceived differently here, and we have this weighted heavily for women, is how rich and low and resonant can your voice be. And hopefully we have access to all the places in our pitch and can use them, high, and when we're excited for things, and when we want to be soothing, and when we want to express all the different things that we have. Hopefully we have access to all of that, or we'll work to access all of that, especially as actors. But as humans who want to be able to feel all the things we can feel. But it's just so important because there is no line there. And you could just as easily say, okay, I want to honor this culture. I want to be able to speak as close to what I'm hearing as I want. And so I will see if I can find an authenticity for myself in that register. That can be true for a person. And the same thing coming here. You could decide, hey, okay, I want to see what it feels like to live in this part of my voice. Or you might decide, you know what? My American lives up in my register from Japan because that's me. Great. And so what I love about this is that we have choices. And yes, those choices are perceived differently. And it's good to look at that because that might influence your choice. But I hope that more and more for each other and for ourselves as humans who love to get to know different humans, we can notice those differences, not and then assign stereotypes to them, but notice them and revel in them while we're really listening to the message of what this person is sharing. There's just so much there.
Yeah. Kind of like what we were talking about earlier about vocal fry and how when you speak with vocal fry, it comes with it comes with judgment. Like it is received with judgment from other people. Like if you're talking like this and you're probably, like a girl that I've heard this before from a man, that he felt like when women spoke like that is because they didn't care at all about what they were talking about or the person they were talking to, and that it was even disrespectful. And I'm like, is that you can't really have a whole judgment about someone just because of the way that they speak, especially when it has to do with you. It has to do with the level of respect that you feel that person is granting you. And I think like in today's world, because a lot of celebrities speak like that, and a lot of, women that men and a lot of women as well have judgment towards, that whole way of speaking is now a character voice, and it comes with a personality that they put onto the person that speaks like that.
Yeah. And it's different for men. Men make millions of dollars off of their vocal fry in a world, it's like, but it's very, very different experience for women.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had something. Were you going to say something, Gracia?
No.
I had a question. Volume. We haven't talked about volume. So let's talk about volume. Anybody been told you're too much, too loud, too everything? Yeah. Okay. Let's hear about that.
Gracia, do you want to start? Because I just spoke.
No, go ahead.
Oh my God. And like it happens, I'm sure, for all women. And I have my mom and me as, the biggest example in my life. But it definitely happens way more with young women because it's immediately like, you have nothing to say. So why are you speaking so loud? I've been told that so many times, not specifically, you have nothing to say, but like I've had men literally go to me like, even when they are not in the conversation with me. When I am in a public place speaking to a friend and I had a man turn around from a table and go, oh, I was losing it. And then you can't say anything back because then you are irrational and you are, you know, I don't know, an angry person. And it's just incredible the amount of entitlement that some men feel when they, talk to women. But it happens to my mom as well. Like it's something that being in an industry with a lot of men, she constantly checks herself like, am I being too loud? Am I being too loud? Am I being too loud? And men never have to check themselves. Men are never angry. They are just passionate. Men are never, like you're being irrational. No, they're standing up for themselves. It is insane. It's insane.
If we were not on Zoom right now, I know we're both chiming in. And since we're talking about volume, I just want to say the only reason Gracia and I are muted right now is so that the sound doesn't just cut out and be incomprehensible. Because we are loudly agreeing with you, and it is some major BS. And it's not just men. I mean, it's the patriarchy and misogyny that is doing this, but women police other women too. And especially this is more and more with intersectionality with racism. So I just want to acknowledge it's still the patriarchy. We're talking about the system now. And that system is working through people. So we can all check ourselves on this. Go ahead, Gracia.
Yeah. There is literally a trope of the loud Black woman at the movie theater. Like, it's funny. It's a thing. But yeah, when we women are out and about and having fun and expressing ourselves and being jovial, somehow it's problematic. And what, not just what do you have to talk about? What do they have to be happy about? How about that? Right? When it's the exact opposite, when a group of dudes are out just partying and just being loud and having fun, and there's a time and a place when it's acceptable. If it's a bachelorette party, that's okay. If you're celebrating something that's obvious, that's fine. But how many movies and TV shows have you seen where there's a group of women out at happy hour and they're just having fun and being loud, or just existing, being just having fun, just being out and about? Honestly, I remember living abroad and getting used to being out at a pub, and the normal volume, just everyone collectively, everyone just kind of tunes into whatever volume is culturally acceptable. And then I remember coming back and being out in public and honestly being very uncomfortable with the volume of the people that I was with, and just tone it down. And I was the problem because I had left and come back, so it was very obvious and noticeable to me. So from a cultural perspective, there are differences when you're out of the US and coming back in. But bringing it back here, I am a loud human. I always have been. I come from a very loud family where I am technically the quiet one in my family. And my inside voice is also my outside voice. It just is. So it's interesting when I'm aware that I have to monitor my own volume so I'm not disturbing other people, and monitoring what I'm saying in comparison to others, and making sure that I'm not saying things that would be other people are overhearing what I'm saying. And even if my volume is louder, I still have to speak very eloquently and appropriately because I am being listened to, even though mind your business. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to them. But even my volume, whatever it is, I am being listened to. So even if even if I do turn it down a little bit, people are still listening, waiting for me to slip. So then they have something to jump on. Mm-hmm. So I can monitor I can censor myself. I can control my own volume. It doesn't matter. I'm still being watched. I'm being listened to. So again, racism, patriarchy, all of those things rolled into one. But yeah, volume is interesting. And there's a whole like going into the history of just Black female voices. I love old Hollywood. I love the 70s Blaxploitation. I love there are so many eras where Black women, Black female voices were expected to project and carry because I am a strong Black woman and here I am. But even when oh no, did it freeze?
No.
It froze as I'm speaking.
No, we can see you. Oh, now you're frozen. There was a delay. Oh, I want to hear this. Let me give her a sec.
What she was saying was so interesting.
I know. Yeah.
It's so interesting because even, like you grow up with all this, like a nice girl is not too loud. Don't speak unless you're spoken to. Or if you're gonna say something, this is something that my dad would even say to me, and he has gotten so much better, I will say, and he has like done so much self-reflection, you know, in my 20 years. But when I was little, he would be like, make sure that if you're gonna speak, it's because you actually have something to say. And I'm like, oh, thinking back on it, it's something he would never tell me now, but it's something that he grew up with in his own home,
As if as if you wouldn't actually have something to say, as if you would talk without having something to say.
Yeah.
That's the expectation. Wow. So Gracia, we heard you all the way up until you said, "Oh, I think I'm frozen." So we got all of that. And then you weren't frozen for a second, and then you were gone. But we did want to hear the conclusion of that if there was more to say. And then you unmuted, Mano.
I don't even remember. I was so oh, anyway.
So Rich, we're talking about volume, and this is cultural, just like spice is cultural. So if you look at the spices of, say, England, there are none. There are no spices, like there's actually recipes. I did all this research into the 1800s for this film, and one of the recipes is like you take a clove of garlic and you swirl it around the bowl. That's the garlic. That's it. Clove be gone. That was your garlic for the family. What? So yeah. So for me, I totally got all the conditioning about be the quiet, small, also middle child of two boys. But like, and in a church going family for the first 12 years of my life. And I was too much. And and as a creative person, too much. And I would like to sing too much, all those things, loving family, but all the conditioning is there. And then moving to Australia and not wanting to be, listening to the super loud Americans who would just come in and sort of take over and not wanting to be one of them. And same in New Zealand, not wanting to be one of those people. And then, not wanting to be a white woman taking over everybody else's space. Really important. And then my husband is Indian. And when we first started dating, I think we'd been dating like 6 months when I first got to meet his family, and their volume level is entirely the opposite spectrum of my family. So just recalibrating to the cultural cues took a while, that just because it's loud doesn't mean it's an alarm. It's just a totally normal response to anything. And so that, like, just knowing, hey, culturally we turn the volume different places, and isn't that fun? And being able to then, with my husband, with like, find my full laugh. I have a huge laugh that never really got to laugh that much. I mean, I could laugh somewhat, but laughs are huge. And, you know, there are whole places where we're supposed to cover that up and stuff. But like, just being able to, we laugh all the time. And now we have very voluminous, you know, conversations, and we're silly and bizarre. And that feels really natural to me. So I want to call a difference between conditioned and natural. It was not how I was raised. It was not the conditioning of what felt natural to me when I was in that place where I'm allowed to be natural up until a point. But I would say, let's embrace volume because there's so much release that happens in our bodies when we don't have to hold all that stuff and get headaches and get tension patterns and get all these things. Yeah. So any final words? I know we've been talking for a while and this is so rich. We could talk forever, but any final quick wrap ups from each of you?
Well, I just want to agree with you so much with the laugh. I mean, it's something that I'm still struggling with and I'm still trying to figure out because every time that I laugh really hard or really loudly, I can hear the voice in my head being like, that's too loud. Or it's not like ladylike or it's not feminine, you know, and like wanting to cover up my mouth as well. And I think it's so important to surround ourselves with women that are also in that journey of, you know, getting to know themselves and getting to feel, you know, all of the things and express all of the things. And I feel really grateful to be in this group of women, where I feel safe and comfortable and encouraged to be myself. And I guess you can see now already like how my like tone of voice is so much higher. Feel so much more comfortable, you know, and able to just like be myself. And I hope that this conversation really helps people out there watching us to embrace that as well. And we're all in this journey together.
Yay. Oh, I love that. One thing that when I'm working with actors, I always remind them that if you are playing an American in America, one thing, one demographic reason why we are able to have the volume that we have is space. We have space, lots and lots of space. And even if you are in a big city, you know, even if you are like in New York, that's a different explanation for the volume, for the noise there, because you just get used to, if you can hear your neighbors, they can hear you. No one really cares anymore. That's, you just get over that. Like, I don't worry about it. But in the rest of the US, outside of the big cramped cities, which there's only a few, there's space. You have space to yell. No one is, you're not bothering anybody. So we have that ability, we have that privilege as just Americans being on this land. We do have that privilege of having that space that we can project. So it's not there. Of course, there are nuance when it comes to the conditioning and all of those things. Of course, of course. But in general, one of the reasons why we can generally project is because we have the space. We can do it. And before I moved to this house, I was living on an acre, which was the smallest plot because the neighbors next to us had like 40 acres. Behind, there was 23 acres behind. My neighbor across the street, her front yard was 2 acres just to get to the front door. So I wasn't bothering anybody with my noise. It didn't matter. But we are able to project, and that's again the nuance in that with all of the culture and conditioning, and there's more to it, but that you can start there, like, oh yeah, there's a lot of space. You can open up wide and express yourself and yell. No one's gonna hear you. No one cares because they're doing it too. So
I love that. Yeah, it's an interesting conundrum because I noticed that, but I noticed it more in other countries than how I was brought up, and in like my friends, most of my friends' homes and stuff, that it was all, you keep everything really contained, especially if you're a girl. So yeah, it's just so interesting. There's so many, what I'm noticing is there's a lot of double standards. There's a lot of interlocking restrictions and constrictions. And so my wish here is, may we just be more aware so that we can notice those things if we notice them, and then bring it back to the richness at hand of us being human together. And yeah, and it's kind of magical. It's never going to happen again in the same way. And here we all are. So I'm glad we can be together and have this space to explore this and more. Thank you for joining with us. Please share your experiences, your questions, with respect, with love, and to be continued. Ah! Yeah.
Bye, everyone.